So welcome to part 1 of 2 of the Targeted Solutions training sessions. These are designed to be a tool to help you understand the capabilities of targeted solutions and what they can do for you and your clients. So what is Targeted Solutions? Targeted Solutions, or TS, are the mapping and data team for Salmat. So some of their workload is simple mapping and listing for clients. However, they also have the ability to create strategic and targeted solutions for your clients as well. So TS can use a client's database to create heat maps or hot to cold maps. They can identify where customers are and map that out for the client using geocoding and database pinning. They can also help the client identify the profile of their main customer base using census data. So as you can see, there's quite a range of options available to you and your customers. So who are Targeted Solutions? So we currently have 6 members of the TS team. The manager of the group is Kimmy. We have 2 TS guys onshore in Sydney, Michael and Diane. And then we have 3 additional team members, Cornell, Mark and Robert, who are part of the microsourcing team in the Philippines. So did you know that Targeted Solutions is not just maps? There are a great deal of things that the TS guys can help you with to help you find a really strategic solution for your client. So things such as using market find profiles or groups, geocoding. They can segment the customer's database using psychographics. They can use census data, hot to cold maps. There's a great range of products available. So this training is designed to ensure that you familiarise yourself with the many options that we have available to help find your clients the best solution, and it's also an additional great source of revenue. So the lodgement process. So there's a few different stages that your lodgement will go through once you've created a job in Phantom. So the start is obviously starting new. So this will be a new or a duplicate of a previous job. It will then go to quoted. So this is the default status once a job has been submitted in Phantom. From there, it will move to lodged, which has been lodged in a system ready for review by the mapping team. Once they've reviewed it, they then approve it, and it then goes to the approved stage ready for allocation or assignment. Once that's happened, it then moves to the assigned stage, which means you then have a Targeted Solutions team member who will be completing your job. So from here, the TS team will then complete the job. Once that has been done, the job will move to processed and it will be sent to you for checking. Once you have completed your checks, the job will then move to being finalised, which means that any amendments or changes have been made and the job is complete. You will then move on to invoicing stage. So the invoice has been sent by Targeted Solutions for payment from the client, and they then close the job. So these are basically the different little statuses you will see next to your job as it moves through the process in Phantom. So how to lodge Targeted Solutions. So Targeted Solutions can be found through the Sales tab in Phantom. Once you click that down, you'll get a drop-down menu. You then select Targeted Solutions and Job. So from here, that will then take you to this screen. This is basically a summary of all of the jobs that you have lodged previously. You have a few options here. If you would like to look at your previous job, you can search either by name or job ID or client ID if you have that information. You can also create a new job from here. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So there's a few things you need to know when you're going to lodge a job for Targeted Solutions. Similar to a job in Phantom, there's a lot of little bits of information that you need before you proceed. So who is being charged for the job? So whether that's the client or if it's a cost that Salmat will be taking up. Is the mapping part of a client service level agreement? So they might have that included as part of their SLA. Is it for a pitch? There's a few different options there. You would then enter the job details the same as you would for a normal Phantom job. When you do need the job back, so it's important to include the account manager and account coordinator, include their contact details in case there are any questions. You'll also need to identify when you're presenting it to the client, like what's your expectation of the deadline. Is it a new TS job or an existing? It's also helpful to include the previous number of the job if there is one available. Just helps to make sure everybody's referring back to the most recent information. So just go through the screenshots of what that's going to look like when you come into Phantom. So this is where you enter your client ID. Once you've entered that, the rest of that information will populate automatically. You then need to obviously include if it's charged to distribution, which would put the charges for this TS job onto a Phantom job, and it would all be invoiced as one client pitch, or if the job relates to another client. So if it does relate to another client, you'll get another drop down. There you would enter the other client ID. Again, once you've entered that, the other client information will populate automatically. From there, that is where you enter the rest of your job information. So job name, deadline, contact details, and all of those additional pieces of information. So moving on from that, your next lot of information you need to include in your job is what does the client need to have analysed. So you've got a few options here. Walker level is typically the areas that we talk in SALMAT. So that represents our Walker post zones and sections, and that obviously represents the geographical area that makes up a Walker section. The other option there is CCD. So that is a census collection district. They're actually been renamed, so they're now called SA1s, which is a statistical area 1. So they are the smallest division in each census area and are drawn to have a population of approximately 200 to 800 persons. Our Walker areas are based off CCDs, although the areas are not quite the same and they are not interchangeable. So some clients may have their own data, which would more than likely relate to a census collection district, but it can be translated to be applicable to a Walker level area as well. So typically most people would be using Walker level for their mapping jobs. Your next lot of options there is houses. So the count of houses excluding NAMs or no advertising material homes. That's again one of the options there. Units, so the count of units excluding NAMs. You've also got houses and units. That's probably the most commonly used one. Then you obviously can select NAMs, so no advertising material addresses, or COMs, which is business addresses. So basically what you're saying there is what you want the numbers to come back to you in which format. Would you like to look at the houses and units? Would you like to look at only NAMs or only business addresses, etc.? So from there, you then go down to your analysis area. So again, you've got a few options there. You can either look at the national analysis area, or you can break that down by state, depending on what you need to do. From there, you then need to look at what area you would like your analysis based on. So you've got 4 options there. You can either look at just a store catchment, you can look at an entire state or a metro area, you can have the analysis based on national. Typically, most of them would either be national or metro and state. It's fairly unusual that they would look at store only, but again, it can happen. And the last checkbox there, which comes up automatically, is that you want to be looking at letterbox distribution. So once you've filled out all of those, you then go through to the next section. And this is where we start to look at the actual maps that your client has requested. So when you're looking at data and map type, there's a few options here. So address plotting and pinning. The first is client sites. So if you look on the map example on the right-hand side there, you can see that there is a yellow star. So that is a client's store location or a store plot. When we include those, your client may also wish to include competitors. So they will come up in different colours. For example, you might have, your client might be Woolworths and their competitor might be Coles and Aldi. So the mapping team can include that on a legend and give each different competitor their own different colour, so you can identify the differences between those on your map. It's important to note that if we don't have a competitor listing on file for your client, that we would need them to provide that to be able to do this type of plotting, because we don't have everything on file, but we do have a lot of things on file. So if you're unsure, ask the question. It's certainly something that can be looked into. So moving on from that, you then have geocoding. So geocoding, you actually need to, you give the data to the TS team, and that is just the process of getting the longitude and latitude into a table, which you can see at the bottom there. So geocoding on its own will only create a geocoded listing. Something that you might have a use for that for, a client might wish to have their database geocoded so that they can load that into Google to correctly plot their store addresses. So when somebody is looking for one of their stores, they can look it up, and the geocoded information that they've put into Google, like the client has put into Google, will allow the customer to accurately find one of their stores. So that's one option. This, again, is just to put it into the table format. When you do geocoding as well, TS can also clean up your customer database to remove any anomalies and those sorts of things. If you then want the location of the customers plotted onto a map, you would also need to select database pinning. So the difference of that is that once we then have the information from the geocoded database file, we then plot that onto the map. So when you're looking at the map example on the right there, that's the small blue dots. So all of those blue dots are locations where a customer has purchased something from this particular client. So the last option there is GNAF. So that's a geocoded national address file. So this is a specific database created by PMSA, and it's recognised as a master database containing addresses and information that relates to the longitude and latitude of a location. So those are your options there for data and map type. Moving on from that, you then go into catchment creation. So a standard catchment creation, this is the basis for any mapping job. So it could be simply, I would like a 2,000 kilometre radius around each store. And so TS would then go and plot that, draw, a 2,000 radius around each store. And this map on the right here would be perhaps what that might look like. It doesn't have any targeting attached to it. That's just literally a standard catchment creation. So it could be, you could do it by a postcode, you could do it by a specific suburb, or filling in a general area, perhaps a metropolitan area. It's simply selecting areas with no targeting, and that is how the map is created and built. So following on from that, you could then modify a catchment creation by looking at drive distance and time. So on the left there, you can see a small table which has distance, kilometres, drive time, and obviously the unit is minutes. So you could say, I would only like to target people who are within a 15-minute drive from a particular store, or within a certain amount of kilometres. So looking at the map example on the right there, if you said you only wanted them within a certain amount of minutes from the store, the areas that are across the water may no longer be part of the catchment because they would take a longer time to arrive at the store than people who are closer. So that's just a few options and a few things to consider there. The next checkbox under catchment creation is update DC to next period. So DC is definitely one you need to tick during an update period. DC stands for distribution catchment, and this is essentially a data set that is maintained in the system by TS. It's more often than not used for larger clients who have regular jobs, and particularly jobs that are run through TS. So clients such as Coles, Woolworths, those larger customers that do a lot of distributions will have an on-file distribution catchment area. So it's something important to point out that if you just have a listing for your client, you may not need it to be stored as a DC. But when we go through the updates period, you will need to make sure you say update DC to next period, because that will then take in all the new updated numbers for the next update. as you can see here, this is the next stage of that map. So we've modified that map looking at the drive time. You can see the difference there, that we've gone from a standard catchment to looking at only the drive time distance, and that's reduced that map down to a smaller area. So that covers off part one. If you do have any questions, please feel free to field them to either Michael Breen or myself, Susan Geraghty. More than happy to answer those. And yeah, please let us know if there's anything we can assist with. Thank you.